Hi guys, so before we begin, let me ask you a very simple question. How many times have you tried to mug up the process of urine formation and how many times were you successful in it? Because I know when you start with urine formation, you start with the ultrafiltration. That's somewhat easy to memorize and you can easily understand the facts there. But when you move on to selective reabsorption, that is also quite okay. But when you come to secretion, that's when the whole hassle begins. You find it very difficult to store the information about all the points and the facts that they have given under ultrafiltration, selective reabsorption, and secretion as a whole. And it's very difficult for you to distinguish what occurs in which location in the nephron. So let me tell you how you can understand this and easily memorize this so that you can even be able to write an essay if it is coming up in the future exams. So let's begin. So you know, urine formation is going to have three main steps, and all three steps are going to take place in what? The nephron. So we know the structure of the nephron here. This is the nephron, and the nephron is going to have something called the glomerulus and the Bowman's capsule. So that is where the urine formation process begins. So the first step is going to be ultrafiltration, which is very much basic. Why? Because ultrafiltration is going to be something like this. Ultrafiltration is a process where you have something called the glomerulus. What is a glomerulus? Glomerulus means just simple blood capillaries. Simple blood capillaries are going to form a ball of capillaries called what? The glomerulus. Now this glomerulus is going to be inside a structure, a ball-like structure called what? The Bowman's capsule. Now what happens here is that the capillaries in the glomerulus and also in the Bowman's capsule, they are going to have small pores. Pores means they are going to have small holes. And what's going to happen is materials from the capillary is going to move into the Bowman's capsule. This is going to take place under high pressure. So there are some materials that move from the capillaries to the Bowman's capsule, and the reason for them to be able to move is because they are small enough to move through the small holes. So what are the examples of materials that can easily move through these holes? We can say, for example, vitamins. And then you can say amino acids can move in that manner. And then you can also say glucose. And then other small molecules can also move. Ions can move. And then nitrogenous waste products can also move. So these are some examples of materials, and even water can move through this. But we know there are some materials in the blood capillaries which are really large. They're really large. So can they move from the blood capillaries to the Bowman's capsule? No, right? Because they're very large. They'll obviously get stuck when they try to move through the hole. So you have to understand ultrafiltration takes place in the blood capillaries of the glomerulus and the inner wall of the Bowman's capsule. So the inner wall, this part only, is going to consist of porous cells, and that is where the materials are going to be absorbed from the glomerulus to the Bowman's capsule. Now, so large molecules, like we can say blood cells, platelets, and plasma proteins, they cannot move from the blood capillaries to the Bowman's capsule. Why? Because they're obviously large. How can large molecules move through the small holes, right? So that is what is, the basic idea of what is going to happen in the ultrafiltration process. Now, then we move on to something called the selective reabsorption. Selective reabsorption means now because of this being absorbed, there's going to be something called the glomerular filtrate. This filtrate is going to be present inside the Bowman's capsule. So let me show you here. So if you consider the nephron, here this is the glomerulus I spoke about, and you have the Bowman's capsule. So now whatever that is filtered is going to be there in the Bowman's capsule, right? So now the Bowman's capsule is going to have some amount of filtrate. Now this filtrate has both, it has useful materials and also useless materials to the body. So what we have to do, the body needs to reabsorb the useful materials and it has to excrete the useless materials. So how does that take place? So if you want to reabsorb the useful materials, so the glomerular filtrate here is going to have both useful and useless materials. Now, what do you have to do with the useful materials? The body needs it. So you have to reabsorb it. Whereas the useless materials have to be excreted. So if the body has more useless materials in the interstitial fluid, it has to excrete it to the glomerular filtrate, because ultimately this glomerular filtrate is only going to be filtered and several processes are going to take place. And finally, that is going to be excreted as urine. So the useful materials are reabsorbed. And is like every material that you find in the glomerular filtrate reabsorbed? No, right? Only selective materials that the body needs. So the body is actually picky. It needs only certain materials. So only the useful materials are reabsorbed. So what are these materials that are reabsorbed? They are going to be selectively reabsorbed. Not everything is reabsorbed, selectively reabsorbed. Whereas the useless materials, what is going to happen? The body is going to secrete them to the glomerular filtrate. So these are the next two consecutive processes that take place in the urine formation. But we can't really say that selective reabsorption takes place and then secretion takes place. Actually, this happens simultaneously. While the body tries to get what it wants, it also gives back what it doesn't want. So that's going to be the basic idea of how this urine formation is going to take place. So let me go through the text that's there in the resource. So we are done with ultrafiltration, and then we have selective reabsorption and secretion. Now, even selective reabsorption, the information that they have given here is only about the definition and whatever that is, reabsorbed, just a basic idea. But under secretion, you can see there's quite an amount of information that you have to remember. And how can you retain this in a way that you can even reproduce the same information if they ask for an essay? So I'll be guiding you through that, and this will be mainly using visual memory. So let's begin with that. So I'll erase this for now. Okay. So I hope you know the parts of nephron. So let me just basically draw the parts of the nephron and simply give a very brief idea. So we know we have something called the Bowman's capsule, right? Now this Bowman's capsule is going to lead to something called the proximal convoluted tubule. And then the proximal convoluted tubule is going to form the loop of Henle. The loop of Henle will again form the distal convoluted tubule, and finally it will join with the collecting duct. Right? So this will be the Bowman's capsule. This is the proximal convoluted tubule. This will be the descending limb, the limb that's coming down. Then this will be the loop of Henle, and this will be the ascending limb of the loop of Henle. This will be the distal convoluted tubule, and this will be the collecting duct. So actually collecting duct is not a part of the nephron. It is joining with the nephron. Right? So there can be a small misconception about that as well. So be aware of that. Now let's see. Now, where are we now as per the urine formation process? We are in the Bowman's capsule. We're still here. Now we have to move from the Bowman's capsule to the collecting duct. So this is going to be in a story-like manner. This is how I'm going to explain to you all, because if you try to understand it from the resource, it will be difficult to understand. But if you remember it in a story-like manner, it's very easy. And using my technique of visual memory, how you can remember this visually, you obviously can understand and be able to write a complete essay at the end of this video. So stay tuned with that, and I'll move on to the next part. So now we're in the Bowman's capsule, and then we have to move on to what? The proximal convoluted tubule, right? So this is the picture. This might seem complex to some of you all, but doesn't it seem more appealing than the resource text? So this is how I'm going to explain to you all the whole process and the whole procedure of how urine formation takes place. Now we are here. That's the Bowman's capsule. So before I begin, I'll just want to, give a brief idea about how this is going to work. So whatever I have drawn in red is going to be actively happening. So this man here is going to symbolize the active transport. And this orange color pouch that he's carrying is going to be the interstitial fluid. Then the green one is going to symbolize the passive transport. And water here, the blue one is going to symbolize water reabsorption. And whatever I have given in pink is going to be about the pH regulation. And so you can see green and red again. So passive and active transport. And here red and green, active and passive. And here pH regulation and water, you can see. So this will be like a key to understand this whole diagram. So let's begin with the Bowman's capsule. What happens in the Bowman's capsule and all the other information. So now Ultrafiltration, what is happening at the end of ultrafiltration? You are going to have something called the glomerular filtrate. That filtrate is going to have several materials, as I told you before, whatever that is, filtered in ultrafiltration. For example, the vitamins, the amino acids, the glucose, the ions, and other small molecules, water. All of this is going to be there inside what? The Bowman's capsule. So now this Bowman's capsule is going to be like a solution. Now this Bowman's capsule, think of this Bowman's capsule like a water body, okay? Now this water body is the thing that's going to move down and have this whole journey of, going through this like a river and going down a waterfall and climbing up a ladder and going to a room that's called the control room, and finally it comes to producing the urine. So let's begin with the first part, that is the Bowman's capsule. Now Bowman's capsule has useful materials and also useless materials. Now this Bowman's capsule reaches what? The proximal convoluted tubule. Now when the Bowman's capsule reaches the proximal convoluted tubule, now imagine this Bowman's capsule is releasing water and this water is flowing like a river. Now what is this river? This is the glomerular filtrate. Now here, this filtrate, nearby this river, there are some men, okay? Some of these men are hardworking men, which means you symbolize them by active transport. They actively reabsorb some materials from the river. They are like, now these men are actually hunting for materials that are there in the filtrate. So there is this type of men called the active transporters. So what do these active transporting men do? They absorb materials actively. They selectively reabsorb materials actively from the filtrate. So what are the materials that are actively reabsorbed? Glucose, amino acids, and sodium ions are actively reabsorbed. Now I told you these men that are given in red color are symbolizing active reabsorption. And what do? Once they absorb it, they are going to put it into their pouch. So it's like they are literally hunting for the materials that are there in the filtrate. So he's going to put everything that he absorbs into the pouch, that's the interstitial fluid. Now, looking at the hardworking men, there are some lazy men also. What are these lazy men? They are going to symbolize the passive transport. They don't need any ATP. They are going to just, passively do it. So what are these lazy men going to absorb? They are going to absorb chloride ions, K plus, and bicarbonate ions. So actively reabsorbed materials are amino acids, glucose, and sodium. Passively reabsorbed materials are going to be chloride, K plus, and bicarbonate. And while these two men are there's another type of men, these are going to be like categories of men, right? So there's going to be another type of men that's going to be water absorbers. They are going to absorb water by osmosis. So now we came across three types of men. Hardworking men, they are men, so they are the active reabsorbers. Then lazy ones who are the passive reabsorbers, and also there are some men who absorb water. Now, there is another category of, substances being absorbed and, secreted. So that's going to be H plus. H plus is going to be actively secreted into the filtrate, and ammonia is going to be passively secreted. Now, what is the purpose of secreting H plus and ammonia like this? Is for pH regulation. So to regulate pH only, H plus and ammonia is going to be secreted. So what happens here is the filtrate is going to trap the H plus. When it traps the H plus, so when the ammonia enters, what's going to happen? It's going to maintain the pH balance by converting this ammonia. You would have learned it in chemistry. So ammonia plus H plus is going to form what? Ammonium ion. So it's going to help in pH regulation. And also drugs and toxins. Now, does the body need drugs and toxins? No, after it gets the use out of it, it's going to excrete it. So that is also secreted to the glomerular filtrate. So now you can understand this glomerular filtrate is almost like a river. And there are people coming near the river. They are going to absorb what they need and put out whatever they don't need. Now, after this, the filtrate moves through the proximal convoluted tubule, now it's going to reach what? The descending limb of the loop of Henle. Descending limb of the loop of Henle is going to have something like this. Now, what is descending? Descending means if something is going to move from up to down, you call it descending. If it is moving from down to up, you call it ascending. So now here, the materials are going to move from up to down. So you call it the descending limb of the loop of Henle. Now, in the descending limb of the loop of Henle, water is going to fall down. But when water is falling, what happens is, these water reabsorbing men, what are these water reabsorbing men? They are going to absorb water by osmosis. So the more and more water they absorb, they are going to absorb more and more water. And what happens is that when you absorb more and more water from a solution, what is going to remain? Only the solutes are going to remain. Only the minerals and all those particle materials are going to remain. The solutes are going to remain, whereas the liquid medium is going to be absorbed. So here also, if you try to take the water from a solution, only the solutes are going to remain. So this is going to produce what? The concentrated filtrate. Why do you say it's concentrated? Because the water content is reduced, because in the descending limb, what happens? It's very permeable to water. So this can even be questioned as an MCQ, because the descending limb is very permeable to water. It's going to absorb more and more water. Then finally what happens? It's going to produce concentrated filtrate. Now this descending limb is going to, so as a result of the descending limb, processes that take place in the descending limb, concentrated filtrate is going to be produced. Now here you would have noticed by now, there is a purpose for me to put dark blue lines in the water, whereas some areas are going to have light blue lines only. So when there is dark blue lines, what I'm trying to symbolize here is that it's more and more concentrated. If it is light blue only, it's going to be like diluted urine. Okay. So now we know, as a result of the water reabsorption in the descending limb, which is very permeable to water, it's going to produce what? Concentrated filtrate. Then what happens? This concentrated filtrate is going to go to the ascending limb. When it goes to the ascending limb, what I said was, when you go up to down, it's descending. When you go from down to up, it's ascending. So when this filtrate is going up along the ascending limb, now you can think of this as a ladder. Can water fall from, which is easier, can water fall from a waterfall? Or it has to, like, if it has to climb up a ladder, can water climb up a ladder? No, right? So here also you can use the same ideology and understand, and easy to remember, that the ascending limb is not permeable to water, which means water cannot be reabsorbed in the ascending limb. Whereas in the descending limb, water is moving from up to down, so you can easily reabsorb the water. So ascending limb, what happens is water is not reabsorbed, but sodium chloride is going to be actively and passively reabsorbed. So now I told you the red one symbolizes the hardworking men, the green one symbolizes the lazy men who passively reabsorb, they are lazy ones. So sodium chloride is going to be actively and passively reabsorbed in the ascending limb. And then what happens? Now, when you from a solution, if you try to take all the solutes out, what is going to remain is going to be the liquid material. Now, this is going to be the opposite of what happens in the descending limb. In the descending limb, what happens? From the solution, you remove the water, then the solid particles will remain. In the ascending limb, from the solution, you try to remove the solid particles, and what remains more is the liquid. So as a result of the processes that take place in the ascending limb, the filtrate is going to produce what? Diluted urine. Then we move on to something called the control room. So this control room is just a name that I made up. But what actually happens here is the distal convoluted tubule. Distal convoluted tubule is going to be, you can easily call it as the control room. Why do you call it as a control room? Because, what is control? You try to inhibit something and promote something. Now we know that the body has certain needs. Sometimes your body is going to be needing more water, whereas sometimes the water content in your body is going to be really high. So the body has to release some water. It has to get rid of some water. So according to the body's needs, what happens is K plus is going to be actively secreted and sodium is going to be actively reabsorbed. So notice the colors here. Red stands for active, Re stands for passive. So, and the pink one for pH regulation. So here, according to the body's needs, K plus is absorbed and sodium is going to be K plus is secreted and sodium is going to be absorbed. And also here pH regulation is going to take place, where the body secretes H plus and bicarbonate is going to be absorbed. And then in the distal convoluted tubule, there's another significant person. Who is this person? He's called the aldosterone. Aldosterone is someone from the kingdom called adrenal medulla. That's where adrenal medulla is the one that secretes the aldosterone. Now, this aldosterone is respected in this place. Aldosterone is regarded as a very important person. Why? Because he has three important roles. First one, he is going to absorb sodium by active transport. He is going to absorb water passively, and also he is going to secrete K plus. So aldosterone is also going to help with dealing with the body's needs. Why? Whenever you have to get rid of the water, or when you have to absorb more water, according to that, aldosterone is also going to secrete or absorb the ions that I told you. Then you also have another significant part here, that's going to be the ADH. Now, as I told you, water is needed for body. In some instance, your body has too much of water. Whereas in some other instances, the water in the body is not enough. So according to that, now for example, if your body has, your body does not have sufficient water, what needs to happen? Your body has to absorb more water from the filtrate. Then what happens is that due to the action of the ADH, water is more and more reabsorbed. So this ADH is going to act in the collecting duct and also in the distal convoluted tubule. Now we are still in the distal convoluted tubule. This is going to be the marginary line for the collecting duct and the distal convoluted tubule. So ADH is going to do what? Increase the reabsorption of water to help produce diluted or concentrated filtrate. Now, after the distal convoluted tubule, which I call as the control room, it's going to move into what? The collecting duct. The collecting duct is going to be somewhat, a very decisive part of the process. Why? Because this is where you finally decide whether your body is going to produce diluted or concentrated urine. So now it might be seeming like, it might seem like I'm repeating the same points, but understand that if it's diluted urine, it means that it has more water content and less solute content. But if it is concentrated urine, it has less water content and more solute content. Now, when this filtrate comes to the collecting duct, the body has to decide, it has to make a decision whether the body needs more solutes or whether the body needs more water. That is, whether the body needs to produce a concentrated urine or whether the body needs to produce diluted urine. So, according to that, what happens is the body is going to consider two pathways. Two pathways are going to be considered. For example, if the body needs to reabsorb more the ions and let water pass through because the body has enough of water, but now it needs more solutes, then what happens? It produces diluted urine. So if you want to produce diluted urine, does the ADH have to act? No, right? So if ADH acts, what happens? Water reabsorption is increased, then it produces concentrated urine. So here, what do we need to produce? Diluted urine. Instead, if the body needs more water, then what happens is it's going to produce concentrated urine. So ADH is going to act on it, and what happens? Water is going to be more and more reabsorbed, producing concentrated urine. And you also know urea. Now, this nitrogenous waste is going to be, from the beginning of the glomerular filtrate, nitrogenous wastes are going to be secreted gradually. So here you have urea. Urea is obviously going to be there as a main content in the filtrate till the end. So now urea concentration is going to be very high. What is the main purpose of urine formation? To get rid of the useless materials, right? So urea is going to be one of the main nitrogenous waste products. So this urea concentration is very high. So what happens is some of the urea is going to diffuse from the urine filtrate to the interstitial fluid. Because any material moves from a high concentration to a low concentration, it has a very it has a high tendency for that to happen. So here also urea tries to move from high concentration to low concentration, so a little bit of urine diffuses to the interstitial fluid also. So this can even be questioned as an MCQ. They can give a statement like urea is never moved. Urea is never passes from the filtrate to the interstitial fluid. Is a false statement. Why? There is a possibility of urea moving from the filtrate to the interstitial fluid. What is the reason? Due to the high concentration of urea in the interstitial fluid. And finally, what you produce? You produce either concentrated urine or you produce diluted urine. This is going to be solely based on your body's needs. So you can understand from the control room onwards, that is when your body's needs is going to be prioritized. According to your body's needs only, the processes that occur after that is going to be customized. So that is why I named this as a control room. So this is going to be the borderline where, your body's needs are going to be prioritized. So I hope you got, the idea of how urine formation takes place. And these are very minute points of how water is very permeable in the descending limb, but it's very impermeable in the ascending limb. And then also how materials are actively reabsorbed, passively, pH regulation and all that. And if you try to, understand this, even using a table, there's high chances of you confusing stuff. But if you remember it like an idea, like a story, that's when you can relate to it. If there's a question coming up in your exam, you can easily link and understand, okay, so ascending limb is impermeable to water, only sodium chloride is going to be actively and passively reabsorbed. In that manner, you can easily recollect the information that you need to answer a question if you have a very clear idea about this. And the best way to do this, according to me, is by drawing a picture. And if you're a visual learner, that's going to be helping you a lot because you can easily understand and visualize and picturize that idea, and it's going to be easily absorbed. So you can easily retain it with little amount of revision. You don't have to mark things up very rapidly and then not be able to retain any of them. So now that I have told you the whole process of selective reabsorption and secretion, go back to the resource and if you check it, I guarantee all the points that I mentioned here are there in the resource and nothing has been left off. So now it comes to your role of putting these into words, Now you have the idea. Now you just have to convert these into sentences and structure them into an essay if they are going to be questioned in the future exams. So I hope you benefited from this. Go through the video again if you find it difficult to understand at one go. And definitely you can go through this again and again and be thorough with this part because this is a very important part. And most of the students find it difficult to understand, or I would say find it difficult to retain because this has a lot of information and you can confuse it. So go through this part again and I hope you can get the whole idea at one go and comment down if you benefited from this, and see you in another video. And stay tuned, and I'll be posting more and more of biology topics and how you can easily remember them, especially using the visual technique. Thank you.